Where else would you rather be? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association. Welcome to the people of Penn State. Each week on the podcast, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they're passionate about, and you can expect to feel the pride and the power of the Penn State network. Today, we're going to be talking to Gabrielle Chappel. She is a seasonal chef and educator currently based in Brooklyn, but we're going to hear a little bit about the change in location coming up in just a minute. She's a graduate from the Institute of Culinary Education's Health Supportive Culinary Arts Program. And she works in culinary education, recipe development, catering, and private chefing. She is a guest on the hit Epicurious YouTube series, 4 Levels and Pro versus Novice. And her goal is to provide practical and engaging and nourishing cooking tips that focus on utilizing what produce is available to us year-round. You, of course, know her as the Season 3 winner of Next Level Chef, and she will be continuing her mentorship with Chef Gordon Ramsay through the spring of 2025. Please welcome to the podcast, Gabrielle Chappel. Gabby, how are you today?
Hello. I am excellent. It feels really good to be here. And I am honestly just so excited. It's really what the bio that you just read. If you told me that that was going to be where I am now after graduation, I wouldn't have believed it. But wow, it feels really good to hear it.
Well, we're going to give you the chance to explain how it all happened. But you're in Brooklyn today. But you're local, right? You grew up in central Pennsylvania. So how did you become a Penn State Nittany Lion?
Yeah, I am born and raised in central Pennsylvania. So Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania is home to me. If you've driven on Route 80, I'm sure you've seen the sign for Jersey Shore and been a little bit confused, but that's home to me. So it's about an hour east of State College. And yeah, I grew up going to Penn State. I grew up going to the games. My mom has her doctorate from Penn State. My cousin's a graduate. My dad taught classes at Penn College. So it runs in the blood, but coincidentally, it's one of those cases of it was always so close to home, and I think that I'm about Jersey Shore being a very small town. I'm a very adventurous person, as we can tell, and so for me, I didn't know I wanted to go to Penn State. I feel like that was one of those things where it was like I want to just get out. I want to go do something, and so I really didn't see myself ending up at Penn State. But as it goes, it was, my parents just, you got to visit, you just got to see it. And of course, when you take that tour, the rest is history. You know how it goes. You just can't help it. You can't help but just be swept up in how much it feels like home when you're there. So it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's the magic of the Nittany Valley, right? I mean, there's just something that we can't put our finger on it, but that continues to draw us back here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it feels good because now when I visit family, I'm close to Penn State. So it's really nice to kind of be able to continue to go back. And really, I associate State College with home. Anytime I'm home, I tend to go to State College and Penn State. And anytime I'm at Penn State, I'm normally seeing my family. So it really does kind of just feel like it dovetails really nicely.
Absolutely. So you come to Penn State as a student. What were you involved in?
Oh, I was a very busy student. I was involved in quite a bit. And I think that's kind of the byproduct and nature of also being a dual major. So on one hand, I was studying journalism, and that was kind of the primary passion, was really getting involved in that end of things. And so from day one, I was really pushing myself in taking different classes. And so I remember even as a freshman, I was formerly now up in way yonder of it, Innovation Park. And so I was taking classes video classes up at Innovation Park, and I was on comm radio, and I was the producer of the student newscast by the time I was a senior of CCR. And beyond that, I was constantly just, doing little projects and little things in the meantime that were bolstering sort of that journalism, that broadcast journalism sort of route that I wanted to take, that path. And beyond that, though, I was also, as the student in like also majoring in Spanish. Then there was a year I went abroad. I studied abroad coincidentally in Valencia, Spain, which is huge in the news right now as a victim of some really horrible flooding. And so and as I was literally in Spain, in Barcelona, though, but so getting a little sidetracked, but all that to say that the duality of sort of like being a really aggressive journalism student and wanting to like get my hands as dirty as possible, and also though exploring the world, kind of coincidentally feels a little bit like what I'm doing now. So it all kind of works out.
Absolutely. So you mentioned you were a broadcast journalism major and a Spanish major.
Mhm.
When you came to Penn State, what was the initial career goal? Like, what did you see yourself doing in the future?
Yeah, it was so interesting because I think when I got to Penn State, I didn't really know. I went in actually coincidentally. I think that I signed up as a telecom major just because I was like, I really don't know what I want to do. And I'm a little confused at all the options, but I know I want to sort of be in media. But then by day two, I was like, oh, you know what? Journalism actually feels really good. And this was also at the time, to paint a picture, this was in 2012. So this was at the time when Penn State was in the news. This was when we were at the very height of the Sandusky scandal and everything kind of unraveling from there. And I remember being so sort of inspired isn't really like inspired, but also just motivated by seeing sort of the way that the media was participating in everything that was happening on campus, and just sort of seeing this action and seeing all these things, and the way that the way that storytelling could unfold, I think was really inspiring. And so that was kind of like a push to be like, journalism is powerful and it can do a lot in this world. And so it just kind of, I felt like the right place for me to go was to really like dig into the journalism role.
This is the people of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. Today, I'm joined by Gabby Chappel. She's a chef and the winner of season 3 of Next Level Chef. Well, Gabby, like I mentioned, broadcast journalism in Spanish. I would imagine that your journey to becoming a chef is an interesting career pivot. What drew you to focus on health supportive culinary arts and seasonal cooking?
Yeah, I think honestly, I really equate cooking to storytelling. I think that that is something that really became so ingrained into the essence of what I loved about journalism is the storytelling component. I was never that into, breaking news. I was never that into hard news, political news, world news. That was never really the essence of what I enjoyed. It was the stories. I loved all the like long form journalism classes I did where you were diving into a subject and getting deeper and really expanding on the essence of something. And I think that inherently I realized that you can do that with cooking. You can tell a story with cooking. And so the way that that kind of manifested was just through my career after Penn State. I actually decided I didn't want to pursue journalism.
Right.
I ended up getting into production. I think that for me, journalism at the time of graduation, like I said, I really didn't want to kind of end up in a small town working on a local beat. I feel like I had already kind of been there, done that growing up in a small town. I wanted to really push myself. And so the best place to work in production was in a city. And so I had kind of went that route, and I was working in production upon graduation in Portland, Oregon. I worked at an ad agency called Wyden and Kennedy, who worked for Nike. So it kind of felt a little bit fun because I had studied sports journalism at Penn State for the majority of my time there. And so to be able to be working on Nike felt very sort of reminiscent of that. And eventually, though, I didn't really want to be in Portland. So I ended up in New York City and I worked in advertising a little bit longer. And I realized it wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. And as much as I think production really was something that was like an insanely valuable skill for me to learn and to be able to be a producer for these like top brands, Budweiser, Converse, YouTube, and like doing all these big projects with these big brands, it was like a super helpful tool, but I didn't love it. So that's when I pivoted to the freelance lifestyle. So I have been freelancing for the past 6 years now. So that's pretty crazy to do in New York, especially when you're just kind of winging it and figuring it out as you go along. But through the freelance experience, I was able to kind of take any and all opportunities that came up to me. And that included getting back in front of the camera, which is what I did so much at Penn State, was sort of that on camera personality, the journalism side. And so I started sort of seeing what was out there and on different casting boards and things like that. And so that was coincidentally how I ended up on the Epicurious YouTube channel for these two different series, Pro versus Novice, 4 levels, which were just wildly popular. It was a really crazy experience to be working on these projects where I was doing what I loved and then also rediscovering this love for food. I had grown up cooking with my family and with my grandparents, and it's always been a passion of mine. But even through my time at Penn State, I was the roommate that cooked every night. I was never really ordering here and there. I'll order takeout, but like I was cooking most of my meals. And so it's always something I've loved. But to be able to do it in that setting, like in front of a camera and with these people who are so passionate about it, I was like, whoa, I love this. And then, of course, come 2020, when all of my other jobs sort of dried up, this was what I was left with. And it made me realize that I wanted to be really good at it. I didn't want to just learn from YouTube, which you could definitely do, but I wanted to take it seriously and I wanted it to be my career. And it felt like a huge leap to be like, whoa, I dedicated 4 years of my career, 5 years, around 4 years now of like my career post graduation to being a producer and to this other thing. And so to then be like, I'm completely switching gears and like pivoting to cooking felt crazy, but it also felt so right. It felt exactly like what I needed to do. So
So
the rest is kind of history.
that's a fantastic journey. First,
Long worded, but long
let's
winded.
no, that's great. Let me recap some of it. First of all, I knew Dan Wyden when I worked in Oregon. He was a big Oregon Duck, and I worked at the university. So just an amazing and interesting guy, and certainly his friendship with Phil Knight has been good for both Nike and for Wideman Kennedy.
Yeah, crazy company culture. It was the wildest thing to go from like paying for my own Happy Meal when I was interning at a news station to like the extravagant advertising lifestyle. That was like a total culture shock for me.
Yeah. And then I would argue that Brooklyn is the Portland of the East Coast, right? So many similarities, right?
For sure. Oh yeah, it's weird, but it's a neighborhood. It's a vibe. I love Brooklyn. Of the 8 years I've lived in New York City, I lived 7 years in Brooklyn. I love it.
Yeah. We miss Portland. We miss Voodoo Donuts and the kind of the weirdness, right? The weird people, the weird just vibe. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a really cool place for sure.
So Gabby, you talked about this as if you kind of got into this as a hobby, right? I'm doing production and but these YouTube things are pretty fun and I get to cook on them. When did you go from being a cook to wanting to be a chef?
I think that's such a great that I think there probably was a very defining moment for me. And I would have to say it was probably when I recognized that it was something that I we see cooking as, at least for me, and where I grew up, it's like a means to an end, right?
Right.
It's you feed That's how you feed yourself. That's how you fuel your body. And so it took me a minute to like that like click of like, no, it's so much more than that, and it can be. And understanding the, like, beauty of the creative and the connection that we have to our food in a capacity that goes so much further beyond just a means to an end.
Right.
And understanding that it is just as craftful and beautiful, and you can tell a story with it as easily as you can on a video or through an article, and if not more so. It is just so deeply impersonal and intimate. There's something to it, and once I kind of realized and like wrapped my head around the fact that there's so much to more to cooking than just you know fueling your body, I think that I made me realize like doing this as a career would be like an honor. Like, I think that in society, we kind of see these jobs as just like, uh, I don't know. There's a stigma around it in many ways, I think. And of course, though, we have the contrast of these celebrity chefs. But I think for me, recognizing that I wanted to do something beyond the like typical, and yet also still not, I still to this day don't really want to be like a Michelin star chef. That's not the goal. But realizing that it's such an expansive world and there's so many different facets to it, and that there is something that I can do within it that fuels my curiosity, my creativity, my desire to storytell. Realizing that that was there was when I was like, all right, why wouldn't I pursue this? It's such a beautiful thing, and I'm good at it, and I love it.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're right. It's food is so much more than just kind of fueling your body, right? I think about growing up, and I grew up in a Lebanese family, right? So the food was part of our culture. It was part of our traditions, right? I mean, when the holidays came around, you knew what meals you'd be having because it became a tradition. And so and then when you grow up in like a neighborhood that's that is where my grandmother grew up. Half the neighborhood was Lebanese, right? So it's all about community then too. The church was a Lebanese Catholic church, and so yeah, food was a big part of identity, of culture, and of what it meant to be part of that community. Um, I want to switch gears a little bit. You're a self-described seasonal chef. So seasonality seems it's like it's at the core of your approach to food. How do you define seasonal cooking, and what benefits do you see in using local and seasonal ingredients?
Oh, I mean, this could be its own hour-long spiel, but I'll keep it tight. I think for me, seasonal is just like, okay, what do we have right now? What's growing? What is the earth producing currently right now and near me? I think that, seasonality, sure. Of course, it's January and you're dying to get your hands on some citrus. And so, like, you get some citrus from Florida. Hey, who am I to judge? I mean, like food is global. There's no two ways about it. But the sense of satisfaction that I feel when I'm eating food that I know is not only grown near me, but also supporting local agriculture is just, there's just a different level of feedback that you get from it. I think that I'm not going to go ahead and be all like, oh, it tastes so much better. Like, to me, it does. But I think that that comes from the sentiment of where it comes from, how it's grown. And quite honestly, if we're looking at, taking care of our planet and taking care of our local economies and taking care of our communities, then it's the best choice that we can make, right? Like we're consciously making the decision to support something that is near and dear to us. And quite honestly, I think that it does come with a little bit of sacrifice too. And there's something I think kind of endearing about that. Like I know that in the winter, sure, I'm not going to say no to a strawberry if it crosses my path, but I'm not seeking that out. I'm not seeking out those comforts because, oh man, I tell you, the first strawberry of June that I get, and it's juicy and ripe, and it's sitting in the sun at the farmer's market, and I know that first bite, it's like it's so worth it to not have like a subpar strawberry through winter. Like I can do without it. It's okay. And so really I think that it's just sort of this relationship with food. I think seasonality and just kind of developing like a deeper relationship with your food goes hand in hand. It's like I just find that it makes things feel a little bit richer, and you just have a deeper sense of connection to where your food's coming from. And I just think that there's something kind of poetic about that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. So seasonal cooking as a chef who's putting together a menu is one thing, right? But as just a regular family who wants to make seasonal eating more accessible, right? We might not have a farmer's market in our neighborhood or in our town. So what should we be looking for? How do we know kind of what's in season when we go to Wegmans or we go to Giant?
Totally. I think that's such a great point because again, accessibility is a huge thing across the board. And depending on where you live and what's available to you, it's definitely varies from, town to town and region to region. And whatever's in season in the Northeast is not going to be what's in season in the Southwest. So
Right.
I think that it does take a little bit of research. It does take a little bit of checking, things out. There are definitely apps that can support that. And I know that that's something that I am trying to do specifically on my social media, which is, hey, I'm at the farmer's market this week and this is what you can find, just kind of like giving things out. But it takes like a year or two to really sort of learn. And I think that that's the fun thing is now that I've been so consciously aware of it and paying attention to it for the past like 4 years, I now know kind of exactly when things are going to be coming in, and that's when I can get excited for it, and that's when my brain is like ready to start thinking of recipes. And so I think that it's just kind of being a little bit intentional about, seeking sources, like a quick Google search, like, hey, what's available in the Northeast in November? And it will be like, okay, right now you can get broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and beets, and you kind of just start to slowly learn like what things are available, and things start to kind of make sense from a scientific standpoint too, because you're like, oh, what right now as we're heading into winter, all of these vegetables that are really hardy
Right.
and have these thick skins, and they're incredibly they're also sugary. They're naturally sweet. They have these sugar stores. They're coming into season, and long gone are the delicate, juicy tomatoes and different fruits that are only here for like the summer. They're flighty. They can't make it quite through winter. So you kind of just start to understand too, like how and why certain things come in and out of the season during the year.
Yeah, and now you're the expert on this, but one of the things that my family does is so that we don't have to put like a lot of necessary like thought into what's in season and all that. We join a local CSA, community supported agriculture, where we get our shares every week. And we do it. So we use the student farm here at Penn State, which I know you're familiar with, but it helps us to support the student farm, but also we're getting the vegetables and the fruits that are in season for that time of year.
Yeah, CSAs are amazing, and it's kind of surprising how far-reaching they are too. So, if like literally a quick like CSA Google search, like see sort of what is near you, and I'll be honest, sometimes getting a CSA box can be a little intimidating because you might get a bunch of beets and you're like, I don't really know what to do with beets. But
Right.
again, it's sort of the like you kind of have to pretend like you're on an episode of Next Level Chef.
Right.
Like you never know what you're gonna get, but you can absolutely make something delicious with it. There are so many resources now for making food that is, delicious using different ingredients and sort of how to pair it together. And so it does require a little bit of a sense of adventure, a little bit of a sense of being a bit like having a little bit of unpredictability in your week, which, some weeks maybe you don't have the space for that, and that's okay. But especially during the winter, I think it's a really great time because we're already inside, we're already ready to use our stoves and our ovens. So I think that especially, you're going to get a lot of carrots and beets and whatnot. But then by the time you hit summer, you're going to be so excited.
Yeah. For us, it was kohlrabi. We got
Mm.
some kohlrabi and we were flummoxed by it, but we figured it out, right? We did a little bit of research and it was fantastic.
Yeah, kohlrabi is a fun one. It's like a radish, apple, cabbage kind
Yeah,
of, but it makes an amazing coleslaw. Amazing coleslaw.
yeah, we did it as kind of like a potato cake, um, in a potato cake kind of way. So instead of
Oh,
potatoes, we used the kohlrabi.
sounds amazing. And I'm
It
sure it was
was.
like fantastic. Yeah.
It was phenomenal. So speaking of kohlrabi and kind of seasonal vegetables, right? Another thing that you've become really passionate about, and it's a big topic in the food world now, is plant-based eating. So when we talk about plant-based eating, it can mean different things to different people. Share your perspective on what that means to you and how you see it impacting the environment through our food choices.
Yeah, I mean, to me, plant-based, quite literally, I think of as based on plants, which
Right,
doesn't mean I'm necessarily excluding other things.
right,
To me it's the balance, and I kind of like to draw on this very Japanese sort of mentality of like they refer to things a lot as like 80/20, like eat until you're 80% full, or doing something like it's about having like the balance and the wiggle room. So for me that mostly means like 80% of the food I'm eating is plants. The other 20% is cheese, bacon, pork belly. And that typically when I'm eating animal protein or animal products, it's kind of coming through the form of like a dinner experience or cultural foods, things that I'm not necessarily cooking for myself. Because the other thing that I really love to let people know about plant-based cooking is it is much cheaper. It is so much cheaper to eat plant-based. And I have also a rough nutritional background. Like the culinary program I went to at ICE, I had 4-hour nutrition lectures once a week. So I cannot be like, I am a licensed nutritionist. I, have that. But I personally, for my own life, have a very basic and complete understanding of, you know, how much protein I need to be getting, and my macros and my micros, and all those sort of nutrient balances. And so I think that becoming familiar with how to get enough plant-based protein, which for me is normally through beans and legumes and different grains, you can absolutely hit what you need on a daily basis that way. But you can also supplement. I'm not trying to ever be like, don't eat meat, because I don't think that restriction is necessarily what we need. And there are local farmers who are pasture raising cows for dairy, and for eventually like some meat too, that they are doing proper practices. And that's a totally different situation. Like anytime I am also eating meat, it's more than likely from a local source. And I'm not going to be like, don't support these people, because that kind of goes against like supporting your local community and economy. And so I think it's important to kind of delineate, like, I think that if people just added more vegetables into their life and more plants, like, they will feel better, they'll feel more satiated, and they're going to be better nourished. You're inherently getting so many more vitamins and minerals and fiber and all the other things that actually make your body feel amazing if you're eating plants.
So earlier in our talk, we talked about how you were in Barcelona, how you spent some time in Spain. I know when we were together this summer, you were just coming back from London, I believe. So talk a little bit about how travel has kind of influenced your culinary voice.
Yeah, I think that honestly, that study abroad time when I was a sophomore at Penn State in Valencia, Spain, was so pivotal on like expanding my worldview. That was the first time I ever lived in a city. That was the first time I ever lived out of the state of Pennsylvania. And it happened to be in a completely different country on a different continent. And so to be able to like have that experience was so crucial, and just sort of beginning that like global like love of global cuisines and culture. And the beauty of being in a place like Europe too is that you can travel on a plane 2 hours and you're in a country that has like a totally different culture and food scene and agricultural products. And so that really, I think, was the runway of like, oh my God, I need to travel. And that is like foundationally what I want to do with my spare time. And so even when I was working in production, anytime like I was in New York and anytime I had any amount of spare money, I was normally like trying to travel, because it's something that is very important to me. And that sense of discovery and curiosity and storytelling is all very enmeshed in travel too. So now it has become such a big part of what I do. And it is like a dream come true, like an absolute dream come true. Especially since being on the show, I have had the opportunity to travel a lot, which has been just so incredible. So London, Hawaii, Barcelona, and I am just so excited to kind of see where it takes me next. But I think that through traveling too, I'm able to just extract so many different techniques and ways that food is prepared. I have an entire journal, literally, actually, it's like sitting next to me, so I might as well. Oh, yeah. I have this journal that I keep that has different food ideas. And so this is like from a gastronomy festival in Mexico that I was in this summer, and with some like incredible chefs that were talking about how they're inspired and different ingredients. And like when I was in Spain, I'm learning about olive oil, and I'm taking notes of why does the flavor differ? What makes and distinguishes olive oil in different ways? And what makes it good? What makes it not great? And so just data and taking all of these notes of flavors and feelings and moods, and then eventually being able to take those things and sort of blend them into a story and marrying them with seasonal local ingredients. So I may not have the ingredients that I would have in Mexico necessarily, or in Hawaii, but I can make something similar, or vice versa. When I was in Hawaii this summer, I was able to tell a story with the ingredients that were local to that region, but with my twist on it. And so it's so fun to play with different flavors in that way and be able to just sort of fit them together like a puzzle piece of like what's local to this area and how can I use that to execute my vision and my story.
So I like when I started, I said that there were probably three things that define kind of your connection to the culinary world, right? It's plant-based, it's seasonality. And then the third, and I think this makes a lot of sense based on how you've kind of come into this full time, I would say is kind of the desire to be part of like culinary education and mentorship, right? So you are dedicated to culinary education. What do you hope to inspire in others?
Truly a sense of wonder. I really just want people to see food and see their food as a vehicle to discovery and to learning something that may be different to them and may bring them a sense of joy. I think that through our world and through the way that we sort of interact with our world, we tend to get bogged down a lot by the mundane. And the mundane oftentimes is preparing a meal for yourself. Let's be honest. And so I think that helping people to inspire them and be like, this isn't just an apple. This is a beautiful vessel that you can create something new and exciting with. And at the very least, if it is just an apple, I really want you to enjoy it and appreciate it and taste it when you're eating it, not just in between meetings, one hand on the keyboard, one hand on the apple. Like, take the time to actually sit and taste it and enjoy it, because I promise, I deeply promise that if we all collectively begin to, or just take more time to sit and enjoy and be present as we're consuming food, as we're preparing food, as we're making trips to the farmer's market, there's an inherent payback in our daily lives that isn't something that's going to be really tangible. It's not something that's going to be quantifiable, but I can guarantee that it's something that outlasts, the quick dopamine hits of social media or whatever else. That bite of an apple that you savor will mean so much more than you even realize.
So I have to ask about Next Level Chef. I have to ask about Gordon Ramsay. So first, talk about that experience of being on that kind of show and cooking in a competitive way, right? You talk about you want cooking to be something that that inspires kind of wonder and that brings enjoyment and that people should slow down and do, right? And your experience on Next Level Chef was probably the total opposite of that. So talk a little bit about that experience and how that's impacted you.
Yeah, joy and wonder is a tough thing to pack into making something in 20 minutes.
Right.
I will say that. But it the experience itself was just so profound. I mean, I always describe it as sort of the two extremes. On one hand, and in the one extreme, you have the stress, you have the clock, you have the judges, you have the sense of fear. You're like, it felt so kind of life or death. You're like, oh my god, if I don't make it, then I don't know what's gonna happen to me. But then on the other hand, and the side I really tapped into while I was there, which is, holy crap, what a crazy and incredible opportunity. Like, when else in your life are you going to have the chance to focus on you got one goal. There is literally one thing that you focus on. Like, when ever is the last time in your life that you were able to do that? Like, probably when you were a kid.
Right.
And so I think that I really tried to sort of tap into that kid childlike mentality of just finding the joy in it and being like, wow, this is so fun. Like, the most fun part of the day is the most stressful, sure, but in the moment and in the cooking and in the creativity and in the blank canvas of it all, there's inherently something really beautiful about it and fun. Like, you just kind of have to have fun. And so that's what, every day I'd go in there, and some days I'd feel better than others, but the days I did the best were the days that I actively chose to have fun. And I think that that was probably would sum up that entire experience, is absolutely chaotic, but also total fun.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear you describe it that way because layer all that we just talked about on um, layer Gordon Ramsay on top of all that, right? Very passionate about what he does, very, very critical, has a communication style that is interesting. So talk a little bit about what it's been like to one, first of all, be judged by him, and then to be mentored and to get to know him.
Yeah, I think that really the key word here is mentor. And that's the beauty of Next Level Chef, in my opinion, as a show, is that it's not Hell's Kitchen. It's not some of the other series that are meant to be a bit more intense and abrasive. It is very much riding on the idea and the foundation of mentorship. You are with these mentor they call them mentors in the show. They don't really call them judges.
Right.
And so I had the honor of having Gordon, Chef Ramsay, as my mentor through the experience. And so I was able to feel those moments of disappointment when I maybe would let something go or something didn't really manifest in the way that I wanted it to. But also, they were such crucial and incredible learning opportunities for me as well. Anytime he made a note or something, or if I did something incorrectly, it was an opportunity for me to learn. And I was a sponge. Anything he said, I absolutely just soaked in, stored, and made sure that it was prominent in whatever the next thing that I was going to do would be. And so being able to work with him side by side was such an amazing opportunity, because it's just like you're streamlining the process of learning, right? Because you're learning from the best, you're learning from the master. And so it was, and truly, he had an abundance of patience. And that has been the coolest part of the experience of winning, is just being able to continue that relationship and that mentorship. And honestly, I'm about 6 months into my entire mentorship now, into the experience in that regard. And overall, it has really just taught me so much about how I am essentially just like continuing to learn. That was always my goal, was I wanted to continue to learn so that eventually I can continue that mentorship, just like we were talking about earlier. Like that's what's important to me.
So, Gabby, what's next for you? I know LA is in your future. Tell me, what are you going to be doing out there, and kind of what projects are you going to be working on?
Yeah, LA is kind of out of left field. It was one of those things where it was like, should I, why not? Right? Like, if there is ever a time to just like go for it and do something that's a little out of the ordinary, it is now, and take some risks. So LA just felt like, if I just kind of felt, if I'm going to be in New York this winter, I just don't really see myself having that level of motivation that I would have maybe in a different city, specifically in a different city that upholds and has like this insane rich history of farm to table cooking and seasonality, not to mention the climate for that is like widely supported throughout the year because of that beautiful, sunny, sunshiny California climate. There's going to be year-round produce and different growing seasons that I've never even experienced before. I got a taste of that in Hawaii, being like, oh my God, this is my first time cooking with taro. And it was such a fun challenge, but I'm like so excited now to learn from it and do better next time. And I think living in California, I'm going to have access to ingredients that are locally grown and seasonal that I don't have here. And so it's going to be a whole learning experience in that way too. And then sort of just like practically speaking, because of the nature of the mentorship, I started with Gordon, and granted, it's awesome. I'll continue to sort of have that relationship with him, but I'm now working with Chef Naisha Arrington as my main and primary mentor, and she's living in LA. And so it kind of felt like if she's out there, I feel like I'm just going to be able to kind of get more out of that experience. And same thing, Chef Richard Blaze, he's living in San Diego. And I just feel like sort of the connections and the networking, it all just kind of is in California. So why not?
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, good luck with that. This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined by Gabby Chappel. She is the winner of season 3 of Next Level Chef. Well, Gabby, at the end of every show, we like to have a little bit of fun with some quick hitter questions. So I'm just going to throw some things at you, and you just give the first thing that comes to mind.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Your favorite class at Penn State?
Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. The Longstorm story. Oh no, I'll do a CCR. Yeah, with Steve Krajcik. Yeah, we'll do CCR.
All right. How about your favorite Penn State moment?
Favorite Penn State moment? I'm gonna have to go with when we won the Emmy for Best Student Produced Newscast. That was epic. That was really epic. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How about your favorite vegetable?
I'm going to go with, I've talked a lot about them today, so I'm going to go with beet.
Okay. Your favorite meal to prepare and share with friends?
Oh, I love to make like a stew, like a curry, more of like a curry, like any type of like stewed, spicy coconut in the winter. In the summer, I'd probably have a different answer, but now that we're hopefully entering cozy season, something like stewy, just comforting. Yeah.
That is a seasonal chef giving seasonal answers.
I can't help it.
How about your most unusual We Are moment, right? Maybe where you saw a Penn Stater and yelled it out, or they saw you and recognized you as a Penn Stater.
I think that it was when I was in Japan. I was in Tokyo like 5 years ago, and I was like, "Is that a Penn State shirt?" And then, we let the We Are rip, and I got the Penn State. So I was like, "Would you look at that all the way over here in Tokyo?"
That's great. How about your favorite Penn State sport?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go with. Oh my gosh, it's so tough because I was a sports journal major. Oh, I'm gonna have to go with women's soccer. Yeah.
Women's soccer. You were there. You were here for their national championship.
Yep. Yeah.
And,
yeah. So cool.
Yeah. And how about your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to go with the coffee break. I love the coffee ice cream.
That's awesome. That's my favorite as well. WPSU coffee break.
So good. So good.
Gabby, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It's when Penn Staters like you allow us to share their stories with other Penn Staters that elevates the value of all Penn State degrees. And for that, we're truly grateful.
Oh, well, thank you, Paul. It was such a pleasure. It's so fun to just be a part of the family, and I can't wait to visit again soon. I will be there in March, so stop by. Anyone who sees me, please say hi. And if you want to talk about food, then I'd be so honored.
Excellent. Thanks, Gabby. And thank you to our producer, Vincent Longaro, and our guest relations coordinator, Abby Clark, for all that you do behind the scenes to bring these great stories to Penn Staters. If you like this episode, I hope that you'll subscribe on the People of Penn State podcast in your favorite podcast app of choice. And while you're there, go ahead, give us a rating, drop us a review. It's the best way to help other Penn Staters find these great stories. If you're a member of the Penn State Alumni Association, thank you for your support. And if you're not yet a member, what are you waiting for? Go to our website at alumni.psu.edu, and you too can become a member of the world's largest alumni association. Thanks again for listening and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are